right, so this is going to be a movie review. This one's called Topaz, 1969. This is my final Hitchcock review for a while. Or maybe my last one, period. This has to be one of the worst ones. This one was thoroughly boring. Hitchcock takes you behind the actual headlines to expose the most explosive spy scandal of this century. Alfred Hitchcock's Topaz. Wow, there's a Russian spy ring in France. How uninteresting. And it promotes the Cold War hysteria nonsense. This is going to be another Red Scare flick. Topaz is... Did I mention that I hate this flick? 1 out of 5 stars. Topaz... The reason why I'm reviewing this and not Redemption, Kickboxer 5, is because the free version of Kickboxer 5 no longer exists. I waited 1 day and it was vaporized. If you want it on YouTube, you have to buy it for like $16. Forget that. And if you want to rent it on Tubi, doesn't have it at all. I don't know if it disappeared from Tubi or what happened. Amazon Prime, if you want to watch it, you have to get a subscription to some streaming service co-partner or something. I don't know. I don't understand Amazon Prime. But anyways, I had to wipe Redemption Kickboxer 5 off my list. So that means I didn't complete the series of Kickboxer films. I was missing number 5. Anyways, Topaz, 1969 U.S. espionage thriller film directed by Alfred Hitchcock and starring Frederick Stafford, Danny Rubin, Karen Dorr, John Vernon, Claude Jade, Michel Suburer, Michel Piccoli, Philippe Nuret, and John Forsythe, based on the 1967 novel of the same title by Leon Uris. The film is about a French intelligence agent, Stafford, who becomes entangled in Cold War politics before the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis and then the breakup of an international Soviet spy ring. The story is loosely based on the 1962 Sapphire Affair, which involved the head of France's SDECE in the United States, the spy Philippe Thurad de Vos Joly, a friend of Uris, who played an important role in helping the U.S. discover the presence of Russian offensive missiles in Cuba. All right. In Copenhagen in 1962, a high-ranking Soviet intelligence officer, Boris Kosinov, defects to the West. And you thought the defection started in the 70s. No, it started in 62. During debriefing, CIA agent Mike Nordstrom learns that Soviet missiles with nuclear warheads were placed in Cuba. Oh no. World War III. Here we go. What a joke. There never was a World War III. It was all a big joke. Needing physical evidence, Nordstrom discloses Kusinov's name to French agent Andre Devereaux and asks him to bribe Luis Uribe, a member of Cuba's UN delegation, to provide photographs of documents that confirm the missile bases in Cuba. Devereaux decides to accompany his daughter, Michel, on her honeymoon to New York City with his son-in-law, Francois Picard. Andre's wife, Nicole, is worried that Andre is using the family trip to work for Nordstrom in New York. In New York City, French agent Philippe Dubois is to contact Uribe, who is the secretary to Cuban official Pico Parra, played by the great John Vernon, who is staying at the Hotel Teresa in Harlem to show solidarity with the Black community. Production company Universal Pictures, distributed by Universal Pictures, release date December 19th, 1969 in the US, about 1 year before I was born. Running time, 127 minutes is the theatrical cut. The extended cut is 143 minutes. 2 hours and 7 minutes. I wasted 2 hours and 7 minutes of my life on this piece of turd. Country US, language English, budget $6 million, and box office $6 million. So this movie lost money. It was a big financial flop. Dubois sneaks into the hotel. Dubois bribes Uribe to take the documents from Parra's office to photograph. Parra catches Dubois photographing the documents. Chased and shot at by Cuban revolutionaries, Dubois perfectly knocks into Devereaux, who is watching events from the other side of the street, and Dubois slips him in the camera. A red-headed Cuban guard helps A red-headed Cuban guard helps Devereaux to get up, but lets him go. Dubois escapes into the crowd at the hotel, and he's back to being a FTD florist. Dubois' photos confirm that the Soviets are placing missiles in Cuba. Devereaux, despite accusations of infidelity by his wife Nicole, flies to Cuba. His mistress, Juanita de Cordoba, played by Karen Dorr, who looks like a white woman, was a widow of a hero of the Revolution, which enables her to work undercover in the resistance. Upon his arrival, Devereaux finds Parra, another of her lovers, leaving Juanita's mansion. Devereaux asks Juanita to take photographs of the missiles. Juanita's loyal domestic staff, Carlotta and Pablo Mendoza, pose as picnickers and photograph the missiles. Pursued, the two hide the incriminating film before they are captured. And then they get tortured during a mass rally and a lengthy speech by the leader, Maximo. The red-headed Cuban guard recognizes Devereaux's face from the New York City incident. So we see Fidel Castro, and we also see Che Guevara in there. Parra has heard from the tortured Carlotta Mendoza that Juanita is their leader. Yeah, right. So they're able to get valuable information from torture. Like that ever happens in the movies. He embraces her and he shoots her dead to save her from extreme torture. And we have a really corny looking scene where their eyes are bulging out and they're bleeding all over the place. And they're holding each other and they've gone completely crazy from the torture techniques. At the Havana airport, the Cuban authorities failed to find the microfilms that Devereaux has. He returns to find that Nicole has left them. Nicole put them in a book. Devereaux is recalled to Paris. Before he leaves, Kusanov tells him about the existence of a Soviet spy organization, Topaz, within the French intelligence service. He's given the name of NATO official Henry Jarre, who leaked documents to the KGB. And so we have all this confusing and back and forth and uninteresting change of scenery here. It's mind-numbingly sublime, this movie. In Paris, Andre is picked up at the airport by Michel and Francois. He accompanies Michel to a cocktail party at his friend Jacques Granville's house. Michel wants to reconcile her parents as Nicole has found out about Andre's affair with Juanita. When Michel asks her mother to help her father, she refuses. At the party, Jacques confesses to a friend that he once liked Nicole, but that she married Andre. Andre invites some of his old friends and colleagues, including Granville and Jarre, to a lunch at a fine Paris restaurant under the pretext of helping Devereaux prepare for his inquiry. Devereaux tells the others about Topaz to provoke some reaction. Jarre claims that it is misinformation and that Kusanov died a year ago. He's lying. Jarre panics and he visits the leader of the spy ring, Jacques Granville, played by Michel Piccoli, who's in a lot of art house films. Michel Piccoli. Devereaux, Nicole, and Granville were close friends from their days together during the French Resistance. Granville tells Jarre that it was a mistake to say Kusanov was dead, since the Americans will easily discover that Jarre lied. Those dirty Americans. As Jarre leaves Granville's house, Nicole arrives to meet Granville, who is her lover. She glimpses Jarre departing. So now Nicole is crying over an affair while she's having an affair with the double agent. Granville. Devereaux sends his son-in-law Francois to interview Jarre and coax him into admitting something. Before Francois can succeed, two mysterious men show up. Devereaux and Michel rush to Jarre's flat and they find Jarre dead, a staged suicide, and Francois missing. Francois returns to Michel's apartment. Francois said he was clubbed and kidnapped, but he managed to escape from his captor's car after overhearing the phone number of their boss, known as Columbine, the head of Topaz. Nicole recognizes Francois' sketch of Jarre as the man she saw leaving Granville's house, and Nicole recognizes the phone number as Granville's. And we get more crying here. What a lame ending. What a terrible movie. I couldn't find one redeeming quality in this movie. And we're talking Alfred Hitchcock here. How many 1 out of 5 films has he done? 1, 2, 3, maybe at the most? Out of like 50? Shel Talmy and William Piggott Browne, excuse me. Shel Talmy and William Piggott Browne first tried to option the film rights to Leon Uris's novel for $500,000 in 1967, but the deal was halted by the Bank of England because of the 1967 devaluation of the pound sterling. Alfred Hitchcock first hired Uris to adopt his own novel for the screen 5 months later, after Philippe de Vosjoli filed a lawsuit against Uris. Universal Pictures and MCA Inc., claiming that they had stolen the plot for the novel and film from his unpublished manuscript, Les Roscoe Topaz. De Vosjoli and Uris settled out of court with a deal that would give Uris full rights to the profits from the film, but it also gave the Vosjoli dude half of the profits from the novel. Reportedly, Hitchcock and Uris differed on aspects of character development, with Hitchcock claiming that Uris had not humanized the villains of the story. Uris also did not appreciate Hitchcock's insistence on adding black humor. After a portion of the draft had been written, Uris left the film. Hitchcock attempted to hire Arthur Lawrence to complete the work on the screenplay, but he refused, leaving an unfinished draft while the shooting schedule was rapidly approaching. Ultimately, Samuel A. Taylor, co-writer of Vertigo, was hired, but the film began without a completed screenplay. Some scenes were written only hours before they were filmed. Hitchcock changed the script shortly before the beginning of the filming, and the distributor Universal forced an ending that was different from the one that was preferred by Hitchcock. For Topaz, Hitchcock engaged the 19-year-old French actress Claude Jade from Truffaut's Stolen Kisses. She and Danny Robin, who was cast as her mother, would provide the glamour in the story. Jade is a rather quite young lady, Hitchcock later said, but I wouldn't guarantee that about her behavior in a taxi. Like his previous films, Rope and The Trouble with Harry, Hitchcock intended the film to be an experiment for whether colors, predominantly red, yellow, and white, could be used to reveal and to influence the plot. He later admitted that it did not work out. Oh, and he's in a cameo? I missed that. I wasn't paying attention at all to this movie. What's wrong with me? We'll give Hitchcock acting credit for his little cameo appearance. Production began on September 25th, 1968, and it concluded at the beginning of March 1969. Portions of Topaz were filmed on location in Copenhagen, Wiesbaden, West Germany, Virginia, Paris, New York City, and Washington, D.C. The remainder of the film was shot at Universal Studios Hollywood and in and around Los Angeles prior to Hitchcock's decision to hire Maurice Jarre to compose the score. Other composers who were interested in offering their services included Michel Legrand, Richard Rodney Bennett, and Ravi Shankar. Hitchcock's signature cameo appearance occurs around 28 minutes into the film. At the airport, he is seated in a wheelchair as he is being pushed by a nurse. She stops and he nonchalantly stands and greets a man and proceeds to walk off screen with him. Hitchcock's first cut of the film ended with a duel between Devereaux and Granville in a French football stadium. It was shot by associate producer Herbert Coleman when Hitchcock had to return to the U.S. for a family emergency. Audiences panned the ending during test screenings. They also said the film was far too long. No kidding, man. 2 hours and 7 minutes is way too long. Under pressure from the studio, Hitchcock shot a second ending that he actually liked better, with Granville escaping on an Aeroflot flight to the Soviet Union as Devereaux and Nicole board their adjacent Pan Am flight back to the U.S. However, the ending apparently confused audiences. Also, screenwriter Samuel Taylor objected to the villain escaping unpunished, and there were fears that the ending would offend the French government. As a compromise, Hitchcock used existing footage to create a third ending in which Granville is exposed and he's expelled from a NATO meeting. He's being ostracized. Over a shot of the exterior of his apartment, the sound of a gunshot tells that Granville commits suicide behind his drawn curtain, since no footage of his suicide existed. The film was released theatrically with this third ending and was also edited down by nearly 20 minutes to a final length of 127 minutes. You mean to say there's an additional 20 minutes of torture here? The airport ending briefly appeared on British prints on the film by mistake, but those prints were soon altered to match the version that was released elsewhere. The 1987 Laserdisc contained the 127-minute theatrical cut, along with the first release of the two alternate endings as bonus features. The 1999 US DVD contained the first release of the extended 143-minute cut of the film, using Hitchcock's preferred second ending, in which Granville escapes. All three endings appear as extras on the US DVD, together with an appreciation by Leonard Maltin, in which Maltin discusses the deleted scenes and the alternate ending. The extended cut adds the sequence after Devereaux returns to Paris, in which he is picked up at the airport by his daughter Michel and his son-in-law Francois. Michel brings Devereaux to a cocktail party held by Granville, which Nicole is also attending. Michel hopes her parents will get along, but Nicole cannot forgive Devereaux's affair with Juanita. Devereaux and Michel stay alone, and Granville complains to the agent Martin that he regrets that Nicole married Devereaux. The longer 143-minute version of the film has since been released numerous times on DVD Blu-ray and 4K Blu-ray in the US and the UK. Most other countries worldwide have the shorter theatrical cut on DVD, Blu-ray, and 4K Blu-ray. Thank God the version that I watched on Amazon Prime was a shorter version. I would have hated to sit through another 40 minutes. Topaz earned $3.8 million in box office rentals from the US and Canada in 1970. And there's a picture of Claude Jade, Michel Sabur, and Denny Robin in Topaz. Vincent Canby of the New York Times placed the film on his year-end list of the 10 best films of 1969 and declared it a huge success, a quirky, episodic espionage tale made rich and suspenseful, not through conventional Hitchcockian narrative drive, but through odd, perverse Hitchcockian detail, economy of cinematic gesture, and an overall point of view that can never, for a moment, be mistaken as belonging to anyone but Hitchcock. Kevin Thomas of the LA Times also liked the film and wrote that although there was a loss of momentum at the climax because of the time taken to resolve the complex plot, the first three-quarters of the film were bravura displays of the fabled Hitchcock technique, replete with dazzling camera movements and acute imagery. Thomas singled out the Harlem sequence as among the best that Hitchcock has ever done. Variety wrote that it tends to move more solidly and less infectiously than many of the maestro of menace's best remembered picks, yet Hitchcock has brought in a full quota of twists and tingling moments. It is just that the picture seems to move predictably, and it lacks the fun and surprise, blood-curdling moments that can lift his thrillers with breathtaking excitement. The Monthly Film Bulletin in Britain wrote that the film had intermittent pleasures, the silent conversation behind hotel doors seen from across the street, the long pullback across the conference room, and the reverse track forward ending with a zoom onto Piccoli's face. Yet we are constantly deprived of the action set pieces, which would have given the narrative its much needed boost. It is known that Hitchcock had trouble with the climax and juggled three different endings, but the one finally chosen for the commercial print here looks as if it could have been devised by anyone. Gary Arnold of the Washington Post wrote, "The film as a whole dies from a lack of humor and animation. The awful truth is that Hitchcock would probably be better off if he retired. The most one can say for his direction of Topaz is that it's polished. The compositions are symmetrical and the photography is glossy. But if this is all it is, the film might as well be the work of a disinterested computer." Well, it's a good thing Hitchcock continued his career, didn't retire because he gave us the great Frenzy 5 years later. Pauline Kael of the New Yorker called it the same darn spy picture he's been making since the 30s, and it's getting longer, slower, and duller. No kidding. My thoughts exactly. John Simon described Topaz as both wretched and senile. It's a boring soap opera. Who cares about these stupid idiot Cold War spies? They're like cartoon characters from Rocky and Bullwinkle. Some U.S. critics complained that there was no Hollywood star in the movie, such as Ingrid Bergman or Cary Grant, although the cast included the renowned international film stars Claude Jade, Michel Piccoli, and Philippe Noirette, the last of whom had previous successes that had been primarily in France. Some attribute Hitchcock's casting choices to his negative experience of working with Paul Newman on Torn Curtain, but Hitchcock is said to have approached Sean Connery, who had worked with him in Mount Marnie for Andre, and Catherine Deneuve for his wife. Now, that would have been an interesting combination. Sean Connery and the great Catherine Deneuve. The White Woman. Some critics have inferred that Hitchcock was hoping to groom the relatively unknown Frederick Stafford as a star of his own making, like Tippi Hedren. However, Stafford remained unknown in Hollywood, though he had a lengthy career in European films. In 1969, Hitchcock won the Best Director Award for Topaz from the National Board of Review. Topaz has had its U.S. network television premiere on NBC Saturday Night at the Movies on January 29th, 1972. Topaz currently holds a 69% rating on Rotten Tomatoes based on 32 reviews, with an average rating of 6.2 out of 10. Pretty good ratings on Rotten Tomatoes. And nobody's in the chat room. All right, wake up at 4 tomorrow. Take care of a bunch of stuff, including but not limited to a blood test. French intelligence agent Andre Devereaux becomes embroiled in Cold War politics, first by uncovering the events leading up to the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis and breaking up an international Russian spy ring. Topaz, 1969, rated M/PG. 2 hours and 23 minutes. No nudity or blasphemy in this one. Although there is a sort of off-screen sex scene before with the French spy and the Cuban gal looking like a white woman. Gets a pretty decent 6.2 out of 10 on IMDb, the same as Rotten Tomatoes. 20,000 ratings. I am not into. All right. Here's a more flattering review. Claudio Carvalho gives it a 6 out of 10. I'm giving it a 2 out of 10. But the title of the review is one of the weakest Hitchcock's films. Here we go. This one's dated December 10th, 2009, so pretty recent. That was 3 days after my son was born. In 1962, the highly ranked Russian intelligence officer Boris Kuzanov, per Axel Aronsenius, defects to the United States of America with his wife and his daughter under the protection of CIA agent Michael Nordstrom, played by John Forsythe. In Washington, Boris discloses the Russian movement in Cuba, and Nordstrom asks the French agent and his friend Andre Devereaux, Frank Stafford, to get further documents from the Cuban leader Rico Parra, played by John Vernon, using his anti-U.S. corrupts secretary Luis Uribe, played by Don Randolph. Then Devereaux travels to Cuba to get additional evidence of the Cuban missiles with his mistress Juanita de Cordoba, played by Karen Dorr. That doesn't sound like a Cuban name to me. When Devereaux returns, he receives orders from the French government to return to France to explain his participation in Cuba. However, Nordstrom schedules a meeting of Devereaux with Boris, and the ex KGB official tells him about Topaz, the code name for a group of French officials in high circles who work for the Soviet Union. Further, he tells that the French NATO representative Henry Jarre, played by Philip Norit, is the second in the chain of command of the spy ring Topaz, leaking classified information to the Soviets, and the head of spies is known only by the codename Columbine. Devereaux realizes that he cannot reveal the truth before finding who the traitor is. The dated Topaz is one of the weakest Hitchcock films. Tell me about it. It's got to be in the bottom five. The story, based on a true event, the Cuban Missile Crisis. Is that a true event or was that just staged? Is too shallow and too long. Nicole is a key character, but Nicole is not well developed. Further, it is naive, the explanation of friendship between Andre Devereaux and Michael Nordstrom, to make the first to get entwined in the situation with Cubans and his government. This time, the cameo of Alfred Hitchcock is in the airport in New York when he arrives in a wheelchair and walks under the United Airlines to plane's plate, while Nicole and Andre are welcoming Michel and her husband Francois Picard. The two alternative endings, with the duel between Devereaux and Jarre and Henry Jarre defecting to Russia, are not good. My vote is 6. Title Brazil Topazio, aka Topaz. On November 18, 2024, Claudio Carvalho from Brazil saw this film again. So there you have it, a Brazilian review of Topaz in English. Let's go to the beach, dude. That's what my Brazilian friend from my college days would say to me. Let's go to the beach, dude. All right. More like this Torn Curtain family plot, which is a great movie. Another great movie from the 70s, Frenzy. Marnie, another stinker down there with Torn Curtain. So, I guess the moral of the story is that toward the end of Hitchcock's career, it was either really, really good or really, really bad. There's no like middle ground, except for maybe Torn Curtain. According to Sir Alfred Hitchcock, this was another of his experimental movies. In addition to the dialogue, the plot is revealed through the use of colors, predominantly red, yellow, and white. He admits this did not work out. A shot during the May Day parade sequence at the beginning of the film clearly reveals the parade to be taking place during the 50th anniversary of the October Revolution, around the 1 minute 29-second mark, putting it in 1967 as opposed to 1961 to 1963 when the story is supposed to have taken place. I was confused too, because the movie starts out in the late 60s, obviously. and then they rewind like 5 years or whatever. Therefore, a person watching this parade could not have possibly defected to the USA and warned them of the Soviet missile development in Cuba, as it is claimed in the beginning of the film. All right. Quotes from Nicole Devereaux. Okay, I'm going, and you two secret agents can settle down and be secret agents. Andre Devereaux. I wish you wouldn't use such words, my love. Nicole Devereaux. Why? Who do you think you are fooling, my master spy? Everybody in Washington knows that you're not a commercial attaché. Everybody in Washington knows that the chief of Russian intelligence is the chauffeur who drives a car for. Andre Devereaux says, everybody in Washington does not know these things, and I would thank you not to repeat them. Go to bed. Little marriage squabble here. Michael Nordstrom says, Nicole, where did you hear about the chief of Russian intelligence? Nicole Devereaux says, from my butcher. Opening credits prologue. Somewhere in this crowd is a higher Russian official who disagrees with the government's display of force and what it threatens. Very soon his conscience will force him to attempt an escape while apparently on a vacation with his family. Copenhagen, Denmark, 1962. Hitchcock shot two versions with completely different endings. Both endings are featured in the Laserdisc version. This was edited into Topaz alternative endings from 1969. Soundtracks: Chansons Paroles, OP.40 number 6, 1878, written by Pyotr Ilyich Tchaikovsky as Pyotr Tchaikovsky. All right. Release date December 19th, 1969 in the U.S. Country of origin, U.S. Official site, Universal Pictures Home Entertainment. Languages, English, Spanish, French, and Russian. Also known as Alfred Hitchcock's Topaz. Filming locations, Frederiksberg, Denmark. And production company, Alfred J. Hitchcock Productions. Box office budget of $4 million, estimated gross worldwide $88. Runtime 2 hours 23 minutes. That's the uncut version, obviously. I don't think my version was that long. It's in color, and the aspect ratio is 1.85 to 1. So there you have it. Nobody's in the chat room. I'll switch over to my movie list now. Sorry about that. I don't know what happened. I clicked on a button and it took me somewhere else. Okay, going down the pike. First on my movie list is Vengeance Valley, 1951. Then I've got Away from Milan, Stories of Carlo Acutis, 2025, number 2 on my list. And number 3 is Miami Blues. So, those are the next 3 coming down the pike. Thanks for sticking around. My video What do you think of Topaz? It's got to be one of Hitchcock's worst movies, and it still gets a respectable 6.2 out of 10 on IMDb. Why do people dislike this movie and they still give it a 6 rating? Like that Brazilian reviewer that I mentioned. I don't get it. If you don't like a movie, then you give it a 2 or a 4, not a 6. Come on. Laters.